Welcome to Dark Woods Productions One Piece, a podcast in which we discuss this amazing live-action adaptation of the manga and the anime, One Piece. I'm Dr. Scott Jordan, aka Zombie Scotty. I'm a cognitive scientist philosopher at Illinois State University. And joining me on the crew is this amazing group of people you see before you. I'm going to ask each of them to introduce themselves, tell you their function on the crew, and then maybe a little something about why they love this show so much. And we're going to start with Kristen today.
Wow. Hi, I'm Kristen. I am an actor, singer. I teach Pure Barre, and I'm also a realtor here in Chicago. Let's see what I love about this show. I love how campy yet sincere it is. It's so silly, but yet it's so real and so sincere, and it makes me laugh. It makes me giggle, even though I've watched it a couple times through now. Every time. It makes me feel good as well. And I forget the last thing that you said. You wanted me to say something else.
I just wanted you to talk about what you love about it. Okay. All right. No, excellent. How about you, Ria? Oh, no, I wanted you to tell everybody what your function is on the crew.
Oh, yeah. See, that's what I forgot.
So we're all
good. I am the chef. And at home, I like to cook. I cook a couple meals a day. And throughout the pandemic, I cooked Rio 3 meals a day, every single day.
I am
right,
well fed.
That is amazing. I'm still eating like a 16-year-old boy. It's horrible. Let's fit the ramen is off in the sink.
We live once.
Great.
Simple pleasures, right? You know?
Yes. And of course, we're going to talk about Sanji today, but the idea of being a kung fu chef is just the coolest character in the world. How about you, Rio?
Yes, my name is Rio Shigeta. Kristen, you're already doing better than me because I don't remember what I'm supposed to talk about. I am an actor of several kinds, man of a dozen faces, salesman by day, dungeon master by night, and currently pirate by podcast. I love the show. I love the adaptation. It's been quite a while since I read the manga and a little bit less time since I watched the anime, but it's all great. My function on the show is navigator, which is hysterical because I can't find my way out of a paper bag without GPS. All right. Did I get everything?
You got it.
You're like Zorro here.
And I noticed that you're a server in the restaurant we're discussing today.
Came with my Sanji hair bag.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I'll explain precisely why I was incapable of managing that dude today. When we get to me. How about you, Maisha?
Hi, everyone. I'm Maisha. I'm a master's student at Illinois State University. I'm studying cognitive and experimental psychology along with quantitative psychology, so a lot of sciencey and statistic stuff. But I call myself a self-proclaimed pop culture nerd who consumes about every kind of pop culture that exists. And I love One Piece. I loved the anime. I'm mostly an anime fan, but the live action was there. It was really good. So I'm here in this crew, and my job in this crew is an enforcer. So I don't know, am I like GARP or am I like Kizaru? I'm not sure, but I am an enforcer here.
Well, all you're enforcing is going on behind the scenes. No one knows that we have these discussions, and she lets us know what we've done wrong.
Keep us in shape.
Exactly. Yep. Love it. Okay, well, Rio's cosplaying a bit today. I'm cosplaying a bit today. Let me move my mic. You can't tell, the light's not good, but my dear friend Maisha knows that I either like to cosplay older evil gentlemen, or I like to cosplay older versions of younger characters. So I am now cosplaying older Sanji. Nice. I can't pull off that bit of hair because I did have my hair down to here a while ago, but it got funky looking. And I do own a restaurant in the all blue, and it's known as the Wild Systems Buffet. We can talk about what that might mean, but what I will tell you is that everybody is welcome. You might not love the food. It will change your life, and I'm not responsible for the consequences. So other than that, let's go ahead and jump into our discussion today. So we do have viewer mail. This is in the form of an extended comment on the YouTube page, and had a little back and forth with this person. So the name is Leviad Hista 7335. And they're responding to something we said about technology in the show. They're saying about technology, outfit, and wacky, goofy stuff in the background. The manga itself never delves in too deep into this, but as the story goes on and what One Piece is slowly revealed, the wacky, goofy stuff slowly makes sense itself. So I see Rio shaking his head pretty vigorously. And Maisha, did you say you'd read the manga or just the anime?
I read a few chapters of the manga. I'm currently working on it, but I'm caught up with the anime.
So just in a few words, if you can, is what this person said make sense? I mean,
yeah, I mean, there's a lot more to come is sort of the overarching idea here. And the weird and wacky things, let's talk about technology, for example, the snails that they use to communicate, which in Japanese are called dendenmushi. And that's actually the name of what you call a snail, but in Japanese in the manga it's written with certain kanji that means electronic transmission bug. And so it's a piece of technology that works in the world that is, relevant in the context, but also there's a lot more like that. You'll start to learn a lot more about like Nami's gadgets and how they work with the weather, and getting a little bit ahead here, but I'm sure she'll be part of the story later on, Nico Robin, and what she's looking for with the archaeology and this cube, and we can get into it. But the point is that what the viewer mail is saying is there's more to come that actually makes the goofy and crazy things that seem weird right now make more sense later. And even if it's not technology, for example, why does Mihawk say this kid's got something going on, that he might be interesting, he might be the wild card we need? There's more than just, I think, a gut feeling from Mihawk. There is some tangible stuff that he is able to sense and see that we will find out later as to why Luffy is a cut above.
Yeah, what I like, sorry.
No,
so what
ahead.
I like about the show is that they gave us a lot of foreshadowing that, as you mentioned, like Mihawk's gut feeling, and which will be a really good thing. Then like CP5, those like foreshadowing are like really strong in here in the show. And about Denden Mushi, what I liked the show about that they used the Dendenmushi as like a headphone, as like that was really cool. It was not in the manga, it was not in the anime. So you just like put the snail on your ear and you can just talk like that. I found it really hilarious and really cool. I'm like, okay, that's a very good adaptation here.
It's brilliant. At the end of the 4th episode, when GARP is in the Marine ship and he's calling out to Luffy's ship, okay, pirates, or pull over, or whatever.
Conch. Yeah.
So, and I want to just ask a language question, because you mentioned the snail device having the word mushi in it. Is this related to mushishi? In other words, is this a similar idea? Or
so the word mushi, as it's used in mushishi, is a little bit more complex and harkens back to a much older spiritual sense of what mushi might mean. Yes, they are connected, they're homonyms, and even the kanji characters are the same. The mushi we're talking about currently is just one character of mushi that you would write. The mushi that we talk about in mushishi actually is the same character 3 times, read as the same thing as mushi. So I think it's sort of a gathering, a collective, an idea of mushi rather than a singular insect or bug, which, by the way, that's the translation, even though, a snail isn't necessarily a bug or an insect, that it's sort of under that category in Japanese.
That's fantastic. So this is a public service channel, so I'm going to stay on this educational bit for a moment, and please tell the viewers, if you can, Rio, what's the difference between mushi and kami?
Oh, well, I mean, they're completely different in that the one is a bug, one is a god. But at the same time, Shinto belief would dictate that, even within mushi, there are kami, that there are kami that reside in all things, in all creatures, in all objects, in all of nature. beyond that, I mean, mushi are kami in the sense that all things are kami. They possess some sort of kami within them, but at the same time, I mean, I can't say that there's linguistically a connection between mushi and kami. But interesting question, fun to think about.
Well, it probably totally for my benefit, but I find the question interesting. So I'm always...
Now in Mushishi, a little bit different. Those are much closer to the definition, I think, of kami and the spirit that resides within things and ideas even.
Yeah, I think that's why I asked, right? Because my experience with word mushi comes from the anime Mushishi, right? So, okay, I've been made a bit smarter. Thank you very much. The viewer mail didn't end there. I responded. I said, very cool. We'll make sure to read this and discuss it during our upcoming podcast. I truly hope they watch again because maybe they'll be educated by what we talked about. And then they responded, I like listening to adults talking about a film based on a Japanese cartoon for young teenagers, which was made 20 years ago. And then they make sense of it. So I don't know if that's a pirate note there or...
We'll take it as such for our purposes, I think. I mean, but this actually kind of got me thinking a little bit about like the way media is consumed. And, you know, I am a man child. Kristen will tell you, I watch cartoons every day. I'll you know, read manga that were meant for me when I was 10 and still read them. The thing is, I get different things out of them as I grow and I change and I understand a little bit more about the world or understand how much I don't know about things. And I don't know, there is a certain stigma, I think, that I still feel sometimes, how like nerd culture infantilizes one that enjoys them in a certain sense, that you're not taking life seriously, or that, you know, it's somehow a lesser pursuit to enjoy this rather than, I don't know, Sunday. Do they play football on Sundays? But you know what I mean.
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. But I think it's the same in like American culture. Lots of people, especially women, read YA novels because we get something out of it now as an adult that we wouldn't have gotten out of it as a younger person. So I think that's I think the thinking that it's infantilizing is something that maybe is on the back burner now. Maybe people aren't thinking that way. I think it is much more in the pop culture, and I think especially with nostalgia being so popular now, being able to go back and see the things that we couldn't see back then and, you know, make it part of us now is really interesting, and how you can find different takes on things and maybe heal your inner child. Who knows?
Gosh, I love this conversation because this live action would not have been made 20 years ago, right? No. So it's being made now because the standards for what people are going to watch are just going off the hook. And we want stuff that's challenging. And this show is challenging. It's got all the nostalgia in it, and it's got all of the, believe me, the level of adult content that's being unrolled slowly in this story is amazing. So Rio, you mentioned me being a man boy. My AKA, my alias is Zombie Scotty for many reasons. And one of them is the undying boy. I'm just going to say, I am there with you. And what I can tell you is I'm going to go off on GARP next week because the way they have put GARP into this show is unbelievably adult. And there's a conversation I'm just going to quickly go back to with Kobe, when Kobe's really mad at him because, what do you mean you're working with pirates? And GARP sits down with him and he says, hey, the world's a complicated mess. We do what we can, and sometimes we have to deal with elements we don't respect. The question is not if it's right or wrong. The question is, can you live with it? And that's not a grand line worldview, man. I don't know what is. And that line means a lot to me, and we'll talk about why next week. But that's a man. That's a grown-ass man who's talking to this little kid well beyond binaries of right and wrong. And I don't mind being that guy if I can be that guy.
And this absolutely was something that I wanted to talk about, because this does happen in these couple episodes, this conversation between Garp and Kobe. And I think it is a very specific way to approach what we're calling now the grand line, how things come at you in life. And that conversation absolutely is something that I think Garp wanted to have time and time again with Luffy.
Yep.
But Luffy's not going to hear it, because Luffy's worldview is different. And it's the one that we latch onto as kids and as teens and even as young adults, that like, no, if the world's wrong, then screw it all. I'm going to make my own way. I don't have to deal with that, because I know what's right and I believe in it. Now, the reason why Luffy's the main character and not Garp is because we're going to watch that conflict occur over and over and over. And it's interesting to watch. It's dramatic, but it's conflict. And it's not really sustainable in real life, which is really hard, because we do this every day. We find that our worldview clashes with the reality that we live in.
Yeah.
And yeah, like you said, Garp knows that you have to grow to deal with it, and you have to find a way in which to still maintain your freedom, while still functioning in the required framework of reality.
Deal with the world as it is, and don't despair because it's not what you want. Do the work and tolerate the suffering. I mean, and on the one hand, it's Buddhist straight up, but it's being depicted so well. And again, I don't want to go off on Garp, because I know that's
we'll get there. Yeah.
The next episode. What I do want to quickly bring up before we start discussing the two episodes for today. Any of our viewers out there may have noticed a second reel went out this week. And in that second reel, grandpa jokes were made. That's
Grandpa
comedy. And I have a future request. I'm all up for the grandpa jokes. And if we use them, I prefer to be called Garpa.
Okay.
Feel free to say Garpa. And I thought, of course, that's who he is. So I called my daughter, oldest, called me this morning, and we're talking, and I said, "You know that reel went out?" She goes, "Yeah, I saw it." And I said, well, if I'm blessed ever to have grandkids, I want you to tell them to call me Garpa.
Garpa. That's good. I like
That's
it.
great. That's great.
All this stuff matters. And that's what you love about One Piece, is there's nothing that doesn't matter in that world. Everything keeps mattering. And I absolutely love it. So, and again, thanks to the both of you for making those reels. They absolutely make the middle of the week for me. So
Good.
That was fun. Yeah.
We have fun doing it.
Yeah, it's very cool.
And the reels are so easy to share. Like when I shared in my social media, it's so easy. Sometimes if you share a YouTube link, people don't see it at all.
Right.
So the fact that you two are making the reels, it's so cool. So I share it. I share it all the time. So yeah.
So
social media.
You can feel free to call me Garpa right now when it comes to social media. I'm doing my best sharing a YouTube post on Facebook, man. And I will admit it. Fortunately, Zombie Scotty has a few things to say later in life that he didn't have to say earlier, so he's still of value in that sense. But in terms of managing the tech, y'all. So, Navigator, please take us on today's adventure.
All right. So a little bit of review where we're coming from and then where we're going. So we, if you recall, arrived at the Gecko Islands with the three of us, namely Luffy, Zoro, and Nami. Then we met Usopp. Pretty much quickly recruited him and saved his friend Kaya from the grips of the evil Kuro and his cat pirate gang. We were able to acquire also the Going Merry, named after the late Mary. And
right.
Yeah. And then finally escape from Gecko Islands out of the grips of the Marines who were on our tail. However, all still within Garp's plan. We are now in a ship's chase, and that's where we begin. We've been chased by the Marines, and the ship is taking heavy fire. Luffy finds a new skill. We find that Garp can chuck a cannonball pretty much as hard as a cannon. But we do narrowly escape. Interesting thing here, I find that we're now starting to feel more like a crew. And Nami and Zoro, even the pricklier characters, aren't saying no, we're not a crew. They're like, the word friend is thrown around a little bit, you know. And the funny thing is, I think that we're emotionally starting to unify, but at the same time, as a pirate crew, we're still all over the place, you know, taking fire. Usopp doesn't know how to load a cannon. Nami can't get a word in edgewise to get people to where they need to be. Regardless, we are able to escape into the Sambas region, and this is where we come upon Baratier, the pirate restaurant. And obviously, the first character that we're going to talk about today is our favorite pirate chef, Sanji. So, the butt kicking, foul mouthed chef, Sanji. What do we think?
He's my favorite character. Like,
Ooh.
I have like my favorite. Like, so far, he's my favorite character in the live action. In the anime, my favorite is Robin, but I love Sanji. And I can just talk about him all day. He's just my favorite. I have a huge sim, if I say so. Yep. I'm a huge sim. So So the one thing that I loved the live action Sanji is that they made him like less of a pervert, like more of a womanizer and more of like a playboy. And I think it worked for him so well. He was so charming. I'm pretty biased. Like, whatever I'm gonna say will sound like that I'm so charmed by him, but I'm pretty biased about this guy. But yeah, I feel like the actor and how they wrote the script for Sanji in the live action was like super smooth. Like, it just like the moment he showed up, it seemed like he's like a natural womanizer. He's like a natural who'll charm anyone like that. And that kind of made me feel good about him, because I was very skeptical when I just saw who they have casted for Sanji. I'm like, he doesn't look like Sanji. Is he gonna do well? But he just blew it. He worked so hard, and I really liked Taz as Sanji here. So yeah. And what I like about Sanji more is that his relationship with Zeff. And I know we're going to talk about Zeff later, and I know there is like a difference in the anime and the manga and the live action regarding how Zeff and Sanji became close and Zeff sacrifice and everything. So yeah, so all in all, I think Sanji is a very empathetic character, and Sanji is a person who understands how the unifying thing works. So yeah, he's just my favorite. I rambled a lot, but I am in love with him. So yeah.
That's why we're talking like this. Go ahead.
If Taz ever sees this, like, I'm a huge fan here.
Leave a comment for us.
Fantastic. I agree with you completely on toning down the creepiness. In the anime 20 years ago, but I think I'm at episode 150, and he's just got his hands on all the women. And maybe that was acceptable 20 years ago, or not acceptable, just it's not acceptable now.
Tolerated.
Tolerated, well said. And there's something that's deeply consensual in the way he approaches those issues. So when he first makes looks at Nami, she doesn't turn, if she doesn't reciprocate, he's not going to push, right? And so there's a typical, I'm going to use a charm, seductive charm, but the word seductive might be a bit heavy, but the guy knows how to be with people in that way. And the consensual vibe there, I very much appreciate. I think it's good for people to see males that can still be overtly attracted to people, yet at the same time, make sure that the notion of consent is very clear, even when they're batting their eyes or whatever it is. And I think they handled that very well.
Oh yeah, and I think that by casting Taz Skylar, who just objectively an attractive human being, it wouldn't work so well, I think, for him to just be, coming on too strong. I think they've been smart in casting so far, and for him to just be a little bit more like very forward,
Mm.
but not physically, and not to a point that anyone is offended, so to speak. I think is a great way to do it. And in a live action, you can't get this sort of goofy, nosebleed spurting, heart-eyed character to translate on screen.
Yeah.
So yeah, smart overall. And Masha, to your point, he does do a great job. And from what I've heard, took extensive kickboxing classes to learn the fighting form that is Sanji, and his special kicking fighting style, as well as cooking for the cast and crew, to learn more chef driven cooking. Very dedicated, very method, as we would call it.
I've heard this is
Yeah.
like his second gig, like acting gig in general. So I'm like, it was amazing. Like I know like Makenu and other people had like previous experiences working as a good series or movies and stuff. But this is like that was like first or second, I think. And it looked like he cared for the character, which kind of showed.
It's very cool to see. I think that we have the main cast relatively unknown. I will say Makinu probably has the longest resume of all of them. Extensive work in specifically this genre of like anime to live action adaptations, obviously among other things, but just a long list of things that he's done in Japan specifically, which is obviously great to see, satisfied my concern of representation, but different conversation, and I have no complaints here whatsoever. Iñaki, much younger, I think, probably the youngest in the crew.
Yeah, he's I think 20 years old or something like that.
A few Spanish language things that he's done as far as I can see, but again, like a great talent. I think the casting has been spot on.
I do have to believe that the guy's rather charismatic in daily life too. It does feel as though he's not working hard to be that person. And this is another place where the CGI accentuates an ability instead of is the whole ability. So the way they CGI'd some of his martial arts fighting is just fantastic, and it captures what was exciting about him in the anime, where he would do a 360 with a 20-foot leg and knock everybody down. It's not quite that, but nonetheless, it gets to that energy, and works very well. Yeah. I got to tell you what, man, I got to give a shout out to the kid that played young Sanji. That was the best damn acting I've seen in a long time. His name is Christian Covenry. I got to say, every moment that he was on the screen was just authentic. I was stunned. I mean, he probably had no more than 7 minutes of screen time collectively. But his march across the island to Zeff, he's got more food than I do. You believe that kid was starving, right? You believed his stomach was growling, and you believed he was exasperated in ways that I rarely believe in characters. I was going to say that the young man's got it going on, and it really did a lot for the adult Sanji character. It really did a good job of setting him up to have something to step into.
Oh, yeah. At certain points, I could pick up mannerisms. I think the age gap casting has been quite good so far as well. That I think the same I saw of Zoro. A little bit teenage angsty acting, but still like at a certain point, I think especially in this last episode during the duel, and there are like flashbacks while the duel is happening. I'm like, oh, I get it. I don't know if that's credit to the younger actor, credit to Makinu, or credit to the casting and director, or everyone. Let's just say everyone gets credit.
Everyone.
It was well done. I got it. I could see the same drive, the same energy, the same intention from young Zoro as we did in older Zoro facing Mihawk. So before we move on, because I'm feeling a choose your own adventure coming again, anything more to add on Sanji?
I do want to say it's not so much Sanji, it's about all the actors.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that he's done really well is capture somewhat rapid, subtle emotional shifts. So you saw Zoro, you kind of remember, you saw the moment where Zoro said, this guy's not just, well, Luffy, he's not just this crazy guy. He's authentic to the core. And you saw that subtly in Zoro, and you saw that subtly in Sanji in this episode as well. And I guarantee you they paid a ton of attention to those subtle emotional shift moments, like when Kobe left and Luffy kind of didn't frown, but his mouth was what? Well, very adult, by the way, because it was bittersweet. And paying attention to those little moments, what I love about it is some people may not even be consciously aware that they actually happened, but they nonetheless show up in how you experience a character. And that's something that you can do with film that may be a little harder to do on stage, right? Because the distance. But when you can have the face that close, I guarantee you they were coached to those moments. They practiced. They needed a certain change. I just love it because it affects me every time I watch it. It's like, okay, that's the moment you fell in love with Luffy, and you didn't say it; it just came out of you. Yeah.
And I think you bring an interesting point about adaptation and transcending genre, or not genre, but medium. In that there are iconic moments from the manga and the anime that everyone will know that have watched it, and going through the show, obviously I'm watching for these moments because I remember specifically the double frame and like all of the scenery and the characters, and usually they're just like wet in the face with tears. But for example, and these couple episodes had some great ones. One of them was, after the duel with Zoro and Mihawk, and he says, never again, no, I'll never lose again. That's a big one where he is on the ground, same pose with his hand over his head and holding his sword. The other one with Sanji leaving Baratier and thanking Zeff, and upon first watch, I was like, it's not quite the same. But to your point, that's what it is. It in the different medium, we actually get the luxury of staying there for a little bit longer and getting to see subtle changes within the moment, as opposed to this big manga frame where it's all impact and you're feeling everything that it led up to, but then you turn the page immediately. You don't get to see that like subtle change. It has to be big, it has to be impactful. This, you can get that subtlety, those slight changes that happen, and I think it's fantastic.
It just goes back to what we were talking about last week about how just everything is so grounded in this world. Like, yes, everything is big, but these subtle moments bring back the human. It brings back to the small emotions that we all feel, and so that's why we can relate to it so well.
Yeah, so I won't make all of you actually vote in public, but I'm gonna ask how many of you actually cried during the Sanji Zeff scene at the end. I'll raise my hand. I cry every time I watch it.
I cried in that.
I cried in the anime. I cried in the manga. I cried in the live action. I cry all the time.
So, if it's okay if we're talking about that scene now, Rio, is okay? Because what I noticed is I made a big deal last time, or maybe the time before, talking about lack of sentimentality. And this is the most sentimental this show has been. Right. And because I had put a stake in the ground 2 episodes ago and said I love the lack of sentimentality, and boom, you're just staring me in the face. It's like, okay, what do you say now, Scott? And it's just, I guess it's got to be letting the difference be that character, right? In other words, that's the character, and they did such a good job. I mean, what they're able to accomplish storytelling wise in an hour is pretty amazing. I mean, you get the backstory and all of it in a very short period, and amplifying the intensity of the sacrifice that Zeff made for Sanji by cutting off his own leg. They handled that masterfully, and I feel like I'm battling. But one thing I got to say, when I noticed and I watch these things again, these are calm scenes. In other words, these are scenes where the camera staying fairly still, and the actors have good lines, and they're being able to act with each other, take their time. It's like, dude, you only have 45 minutes. Let's move it up. But they just take their time telling what they need to tell when they tell. And that's masterful because, so yeah, him screaming, goodbye at the end. It is sentimental. And at the same time, they earned it well in the way they displayed the show.
And it becomes...
I think...
sorry, you can go ahead.
I think the reason why that moment worked so well and why we did cry is because they held back. I think if Zeff would have said something back to him, it would have felt cheesy. But it leaves you in that moment of will they, won't they see each other again? Is this the end of their relationship? And so it leaves you with a little bit of anticipation and makes you feel, I don't know, like longing for more. And that's a great moment, I think.
Yeah, and I love Zeff and Sanji's relationship for that. And I became more sentimental after watching the live action because now I know Sanji's family, how Sanji's family is. So if I know the background, this scene becomes more important to me and how I grow more respect towards Zeff to become a father figure to Sanji, which I don't want to spoil, but Sanji's background is pretty shitty, so that kind of becomes more emotional for me. And the reason I liked it is that Zeff doesn't even know him, but the fact that Sanji wants to see the all blue, that's the only reason that Zeff is like, okay, I'm gonna take care of you, and you are gonna find the all blue for me. It's pretty cool.
So I kind of want to pick that up there about sort of Sanji and Zeff's relationship and father figures in the show, which I think is a recurring theme. And almost exclusively, they are not natural family. They are found family. And the relationship, for example, between Zeff and Sanji and how one is sort of bestowing the acquisition of their dream upon the younger generation. And then you have the relationship between Garp and Luffy, which is different from Shanks and Luffy. But for Garp, he had this image of Luffy becoming a great Marine and training him and sort of living life the way Garp thought was the correct way to live life, And obviously that relationship is going to change. And I know we keep sort of hinting at we're going to get to Garp. We will. It's an important conversation that we will have.
I'll get to Garp.
Yeah. and Garpa will have a lot to say about it. But that too, it's sort of an interesting dichotomy, Well,
as the local representative of the GARP Corps, right. I love all of these relationships. Now, when you were saying, talking about fathers that are, I thought you were going to say not often around, right? Because some of them are gone. At the same time, in the live action, they made it happen very quickly that Sanji was after the all blue. It was very, like in his first scene. And it was in his first scene that Zeff almost heard him say it. And that, here's what I'm going to say, that anger, that constant pushing that comes out, it's these fathers figures saying, if you want to go into the all blue, I'm going to teach you what it takes. And I'm not going to say you don't ever use sentimentality, but you keep pushing. And you try to make sure that it's always figuring out what's too far and, what's too hard. And at the same time, if you want to go out and be a badass in the world, you got to. So when you're a mentor, when you're a sensei of a sort, and you run into someone you think wants it, then you do it. But consent is a very important part of that, right? That's why, quite often in these types of things, you'll see the potential student begging for someone to be their sensei. It's gotta be consensual because you're asking me to put you through pain, right? You're asking me to put you through pain, and we have to agree that's the gig. And you can, of course, walk away from it any time. and I'm still going to be looking for someone else who wants to do it. I mean, that's just how it is. Yeah. And I absolutely love the fact that they're paying so much respect to the GARP Corps. Even these guys, even though these guys look like old, bitter men, that's exactly what they're not. They're kung fu masters, just like Kung Fu Hustle, doing their daily job. And if you get in their way, look out, is all I'm gonna say. Look out. So yeah, I love it.
It is interesting how the different approaches to them pushing them forward, right? And for Zeff, it's telling Sanji being stuck is staying here, you know, like get out. You think you're gonna be better by being the head chef of Baratier. Incorrect. He's like, remember what you were doing? You were gonna find the all blue. Get the hell out of my restaurant. You know, but he lacked the words until the moment that it did come out to say that, you know, because he doesn't want him to leave necessarily. They're family. But at the same time, he has to leave the nest in order to do the thing that he set out to do, you know, 9 years ago, however long ago it was.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, and everything I said before that was, your food is shit. Get out of my face.
Right, yeah.
It was not nice at all.
So much subtext behind those words.
A little bit of tough love there. Well, you know, I think Sanji definitely felt loyalty. He had to be loyal to Zeff, you know, and he did love him in his own way. And I think that when he thinks about the All Blue, he still wants to go there. He says it, you know, he's like, I want to go to the All Blue. It's this place where he's telling Luffy, you know, and Zeff, for him, is just like, Zeff saved his life. Zeff had this huge sacrifice. Zeff cut off his own leg so this kid that he didn't even know could live and continue his dream. So he feels like he can't leave Baratier. And so there's a little bit of resentment there as well, which is very interesting to watch. As I think it's very relatable. And
it's so freaking humanly adult. Absolutely.
It's done so well.
Of contradiction. I guarantee you, I'm only at episode 150, but I wouldn't be surprised if somewhere I see Sanji and Zeff having a snail mushy talk.
Yeah.
Hey man, I fell in the Old Blue. I don't know. I just suspect that something might happen later.
Well, what you do have to look forward to, at least in the manga and the anime, and maybe eventually in the live action, is Sanji's real family, because they do exist and we do meet them.
And you will also understand why Sanji doesn't hit women, why he is the way he is. That's why I think I love Sanji. He has a lot going on.
Yes.
In his past.
Oh yeah. I love it. Absolutely love it.
So I feel like we did choose our path, which was going to be between Sanji and Zeff or Mihawk. So we've sort of gotten on to the topic of Zeff. We've discussed it, him and his giant braided mustache. Anything else we sort of want to go over with Master Chef Black Boot Zeff before we move on? Or Red Boot Zeff?
Red Boot.
I think we need to talk about Zeff's interaction with GARP here.
Ooh.
That conversation they had. I would like to know what's your thought on it.
That does, I think that happens next episode. But we can preview it, and I know that Scott has some stuff to talk about when it's Zeff and GARP sitting at the table talking about the next generation. GARPA?
Absolutely awesome. These are just two. On the one hand, we use the word old, and I get it, and I'm comfortable with it. At the same time, these are badasses, and the fact that they may have fought each other. The best scene that reveals what this story is about is when GARP throws a cannonball at their ship, and Luffy does something he's never done before. It's not trivial that it was his grandfather that pushed him to do something he's never done before. And he does it, and he throws it back, and the old man looks at the ship and says, "What the hell?" He just starts laughing. So it's not about pirates versus, it's not about our understanding of pirates versus the Marines. All right.
Mhm.
It's about people in the Grand Line. And for some reason, you know, Garp got into the Grand Line as a Marine, and for other reasons, his son, who were not talked about, got into the Grand Line for his reasons. Luffy gets in there for his reasons. And once you're there, you've accepted the mess. And then you have to ask yourself, what do you got to do to stay there? And you're going to end up doing shit, excuse me, you never thought you'd do. But that's the point, is you're there in the wild part of the world and living at the edge. And so I love, again, the respect they're showing what like people will call old age. These are just a couple of senseis hanging around, proud as hell of their students, by the way. You know, I love it. So yeah, that was my take.
Yeah.
They could do a whole special episode of those two and their previous encounters. I mean, they just could, right? It'd be fantastic.
So, beyond the senseis, there is a whole other echelon of power that exists in the world, and these are the 7 warlords. Is it 7?
Yeah.
Of the ocean, which are a group of pirates that are now contracted with the world government and the Marines to have sort of freedom of movement, so long as they cooperate in certain respects with the government. The first one that we encounter in the story is Mihawk, the Hawkeye Mihawk with the giant sword Yoru, and another one that we find later. So I feel like Mihawk is a crowd favorite. Just, I mean, even appearance alone, but also just like he has such an exaggerated character design, even in the anime, in the manga, as well as the live action. He's just on another level in every respect. And I think his appearance in the show, just within the live action, is fantastic. Just like literal impact on the screen, explosions,
Yeah.
mid-fight, like, and not even breaking a sweat fighting an entire pirate ship. And Kristen, you want to tell us your favorite line? When
I will tell you my favorite line,
Luffy?
but I love Mihawk, and I love a villain that you can love. Like, there are some villains that are like, most of the time you're supposed to hate these villains, but when you can really, really, really root for the villain, he's one of those people. And I think maybe it's the character, yes, but I think the actor does some fabulous line readings. Like when he says, I forget the line before it, he says, you know, like, whatever you are, but I do like your hat. And every time he says, I do like your hat, he delivers these things. He's so nonchalant with everything else that's going on. Like you said, the explosions, he's talking on the phone while he's doing something, and then he like breaks a pirate ship in half. And like, it's absolutely insane.
Yeah.
But he's got this swagger, and he's like very cool about it. And he's like, little boy, you're not going to die today, Zoro, because you know what? Maybe someday you will be better than me. That's okay. You know, we'll let you live today. You're not worth dying today. And I love that. I love getting just that little taste of who he is, and then hopefully that means we get to see him more and more.
Oh yeah.
He humbled Zoro so much. Like it was a very humbling experience for Zoro for sure. Like I don't know what was going on in Zoro's mind when I was watching the anime too. I'm like, why? Why are you fighting him? Why do you want to fight him? You are not good enough. You have to train more. But it was such a humbling experience. I love that for him. And pretty sure Mihawk is like very popular. My TikTok feed is like filled with like Mihawk edit, like all those thirsty edits for Mihawk. I'm like, okay, I see you guys. I see you guys what you want.
And,
yeah, he's between our crew and the senseis, right? He's a warlord right now, but he's not at the level of Zeff and Garp at the moment. And
he's a maverick.
Not in terms of skill, but in terms of life stages.
Mhm.
um, and the fact that we see our crew being so earnest and expending so much energy, and then he just pulls out this little teeny penknife. That just says it all right there. It embodies the difference between himself and Zorro, and Zorro can't help. Now, I don't. We'll see. We'll see what happens with the Zorro character as he moves to the point of being a Mihawk. But this probably was, of all the characters, the most presence per unit time on screen. And just dominating the scene, calming the scene, making that scene his vibe, and everybody else just oscillating in it.
I don't fight rabbit with a cannon.
Just it's like next level science, next level charisma.
Yep.
It's just
Absolutely.
next level charisma.
And I think that it is a humbling experience for Zorro, but he has to do it because his whole existence now is based on becoming the greatest swordsman in the world.
Yeah.
And he's presented, obviously, us watching it, we understand narrative structure. He can't just defeat the final boss now, but that's the conflict, is that like he cannot back down from a fight because his goal is right in front of him. Unfortunately, he's at step 20 when he's still at step 1 or 2. But he has to face it, and we have to watch him face it, and we have to watch him obliterate himself against that immovable wall.
Yeah.
Because especially for a character like Zorro, who from the very beginning we've talked about is so cool and like invincible for the most part. Although I'll say that we've actually seen him struggle a little bit by giving us that flashback and him in the well. And speaking of which, Mihawk calls him a little frog in the well. You're like a little frog calling out from the well. The allegory comes back. And speaking of allegories, also, not to get too far on a tangent, but I feel like a lot of these stories that we're told about the backstories of the characters, they're almost mythical in nature. That they're almost Greek in terms of their grandiose tragedy. That like we're supposed to believe that this little kid and this pirate lived on this island for 90 days, you know, with not but a sack of food, and that the pirate sacrificed himself and fed on his own leg in order to survive, right? This young swordsman had a best friend who tragically dies, and he takes on her sword in order to become the greatest swordsman and fulfill their journey. They're both like these little micro Greek tragedies that
completely.
You know, it's
go ahead.
My point is just the scale of it, right? It's interesting to see how like we're dealing with these minute relationships as well as these grandiose ideas and sort of these, you know, humans, so to speak, propped up on these giant tragic backstories. It's an interesting idea of scale, I guess, to watch how it unfolds. What happens when you're pushed forward by such great and almost overblown ideas, and yet you have to face reality like everyone else.
I agree with you completely, and I think mythology is there to speak to aspects of what it means to be a human being and what it means to be part of a community. And so it gets amplified as a way. I swear to God, I wish this show had been made when my kids were 7 or 8. Because, you know, I watched Avatar: The Last Airbender with them every Saturday morning because that was our church, right? That was an ethos, a worldview that wasn't available pretty much anywhere. And then A Full Metal Alchemist with my oldest because she was up for it. These are worldviews. They're putting people through extremes, and at the same time, those extremes are part of what it means to be human beings. Absolutely, this is one of the better mythologies I've come across, and it's not just because they're treating us old folks well.
which a lot of the greatest cultures, in my opinion, do is respect and revere the experience and sagacity of old folk.
We will definitely have that conversation next time.
We'll save it for
disposable culture versus respectable culture.
Absolutely.
Is a big part of what that conversation will be. And I won't get serious on it now, but it's totally for real. Totally for real. Love it.
Save a little bit for next time.
Keep my powder dry, as they say.
So, I mean, I know we could go on about Mihawk forever if we really wanted to, and about the standoff with Zoro. Zoro has been cut down nobly, in the front, not the back. That would be a swordsman's shame. But now we sort of have plunged into the low point, I think, of our story. Yep. Where our greatest swordsman has been defeated for the first time in a long time. And it's almost immediately after this that Nami also turns on them. Yep. Because Arlong shows up, and we find out that Nami is now or has been the whole time part of Arlong's crew. She hands over the Grand Line map, and Luffy is chucked into the ocean as Arlong sort of defeats him in their initial battle. And so this, I think, is a point where we see a change in Luffy, right? So far, he's scrapped by in pretty much all of his battles, and Zoro has, come through as well. He's had the help of Nami. All of that is gone. Usopp's still here, but he's not, the best fighter. And Sanji's still hung up on Baratie until a little bit further on. So I think that this is sort of a point where we see a little bit of reckoning for Luffy. And we see that in when he's sitting there and trying to talk to Zoro in bed while he's unconscious. We see it when he sits and he's starting to think to himself, oh, this is what I should have done, or maybe I should have done this instead of just acting on instinct and doing what I want to do, because that's the way forward to my dream is to just forge forward. Oh, that, he still has his beliefs, which are that, no, of course I wouldn't have stopped Zoro. I would never stop anyone from pursuing their dream. But at the same time, was there something I could have done differently? I don't know. I think this is that point that I think we spoke about in the first episode about how Luffy will go through changes. And it's not necessarily sentimentality of, oh, I feel bad that my friend is hurt. Yes, he's his crew member and he needs him to be okay. But it's not, well, let's go defeat Arlong and Mihawk because they're bad guys that defeated my crew. No, it's that, oh, I have to be the king of the pirates, and I'm still going to do that. But I've decided now that I'm going to do that with my whole crew. And so let's now figure out how I do that. I'm going to go after Arlong, right?
Yeah. That was his first GARP moment. That was his first becoming a bigger deal. And as you become a bigger deal, the Stanley thing, big responsibility. With responsibility comes great responsibility. What I do appreciate about this, the way they're writing this, is the more he wants out of life, the more it's going to involve other people, and then there will be more things to protect. And so instead of having local fights, he'll have bigger fights. And I get all that. What I do love about what they did was the second time he sits on top of Zoro, he says, Zoro, I know what to say. Zoro, I need you to get up. I love it, right? On one hand, he's going to start crying, I need you, man. No, that's not what he does. I need you to get up. That is a GARP vibe. I'm just saying that is okay. And it's not collapse. And what we see going on in this moment we're describing now is, at the beginning of our conversation, we mentioned how now we feel like we've established a bit of emotional stability, crew stability, and what do the authors do? They destroy it, right? Yep. And we're going to see that happen time and time again. Order, disorder, order, disorder. And one thing I trust will come out of this story is that's the truth of life. Not the states of order that you're in, but the eventual dissolution of all states of order into new states of order. And this back and forth, for me, that's what the grand line is, right? Order, disorder. And it's in the moments of order where we believe we have this illusion, I'll call it, that this is how it was supposed to be. It was supposed to be this. And then something else dissolves that. And we either reorganize and come up with a new supposed to be, or we get out of the grand line, right? And I suspect that this show is never going to, the story is never going to rest into a particular state of order. It's just order, disorder. And that's for me, that's the story I think the author's trying to tell. That's me predicting. Like at episode 150, I don't know.
I mean, anyone watching the anime will probably agree with you that it just kind of keeps going. And we get to one place, and then it's another thing, and then it's another thing. I mean, the conversation of filler episodes aside, but speaking on sort of the order and chaos and sort of the oscillation between the two, it's interesting how GARP speaks specifically to Kobe about how we, the Marines, are the only thing protecting the world from anarchy, right? That this is directly following the conversation about how, he doesn't want to lose his freedom. And the way he does that is to be a vice admiral, not a fleet admiral that is beholden more to the world government. He can do pretty much whatever he wants within the limitations.
Completely. I'm a chair for a reason.
and
I'm
so
with the Starship Enterprise, man.
And it's interesting to think about. Kristen, earlier you said Mihawk is this charismatic villain, and perhaps in the story at the moment he is the adversary, but who really is the villain? And I think that we're coming up on, we've had a very clear villain, I think, in Kuro, and I think we're going to have a very clear villain in Arlong. That again, that's going to be next episode. We're going to talk about Nami and Arlong Park and the whole thing. Although obviously they've shown up, so we're going to talk about them. And so there's order and chaos, and then there's good and evil. And what is that delineation of good and evil, or is it just freedom within structure or freedom within chaos? And then how does that alignment work? It's fun to see the clash of each of these characters depending on where they sit on that alignment, because yes, Luffy's going to come into conflict with a lot of characters that are evil at the time or seem evil because their goals are counter to his. Look at Buggy. He's basically an adversary almost all of the time because Buggy's out for Buggy, but sometimes he's gonna be the enemy of your enemy, and so they're gonna bring his head along to help them out. And there's a jumping from order to chaos narratively speaking, and then there's the conflict of good and evil, order and chaos as alignments between characters that also creates narrative progression by watching these conflicts happen each time with these very unique and interesting characters.
So for me, we could talk about this for days, right? Because for me, the order is never anything but a veil over the chaos. In other words, our intentions, our work, are things that keeps chaos within certain bounds. So one thing I love about this story is I don't feel like it puts chaos on one side and us on another. It's in all of us. And when, we'll talk more about the Zeff GARP conversation, because these are two chaos gods in the sense that they've transcended good and evil. I don't mean to go Nietzsche on y'all, right? But most people go Nietzsche and they despair because if there aren't any absolute goods or there aren't any absolute bads, then what's the friggin' point? Well, the point is the grand line, man. The point is to get out there and make things happen, right? And you're gonna see the use of good and evil as people, as you said, a line on this side and then a line on that side. And, you look at Mihawk and that'll look in his eye when he says to Luffy, oh, this kid could be interesting, right? In GARP, this kid, oh, yeah, I'm going to laugh. these are people that know it's work from day one to day end, and you either go back and be calm and find the binary, or you go out there and it's a mess. And that's where the life is. As you said last time, we live in the icky, right? And the Grand Line is the icky, man. But that's also where how do I say this? And that's where the adventure is. I don't know what else to say. You know, I'll shut up there. Yeah.
You grow in the icky. Yeah.
Growing in the icky because
you grow in the icky. You grow with the risks that you take. You know,
yes.
If you're stagnant, you'll never change.
You know, that's another thing I quickly I forgot it, but it was important. Oh, when Nami gives Luffy crap, and she says, "You could have stopped him," you know. And the thing is, once you're headed to the Grand Line and someone says that's what they're working for, you know that it's risky to let them think that way. And yet at the same time, you know that it's betrayal to tell them not to. And so it's, you either, people can say you should have, would have, could have. At the same time, if you want to be there, I can't tell you don't go. And I don't want to be known as the person that told you not to go. But before you leave me, I'm going to let you know this place is dangerous. It's dangerous. It's full of risk. And at the same time, it's glorious. So, you know, yeah, I'm babbling, but I'm not.
And you're hitting on the point, which is, you know, how much can you prepare someone for the unpreparable?
Yes.
For GARP, you know, he figured out a way to make it work for him, and he wanted that for Luffy. And Luffy just wasn't having it because that was not in his worldview. That wasn't his goal. He found it again in Kobe, and I think that there's sort of a surrogate situation happening that, like, yeah, you're filling out that uniform the way that I envisioned it, that I think is the right way to do it. But then there are other ways in which to do it that may be right, may be wrong. You can't foresee that necessarily. Shanks just gave Luffy his straw hat and been like, go for it, which kind of irresponsible, you know. But at the same time, he did impart a lot of, I think, ideals to him that, you know, you protect your crew, your friends.
Fight all the time. Violence,
right? Violence isn't the answer. He gives him some messages, and then he just kind of like F's off.
Yeah.
And so that's another way to do it, I guess. But is that good? Is that bad? Who can say? And again, like Zeff, you know, you can keep Sanji around as long as you want and just sort of insult him until he goes off, which I guess is the best you can do, unless you're pushed to the brink and can finally say, you're stuck here by being a chef. I need you to get out. I need you to go remember that dream that we had, and I need you to go get it.
Quit is staying here. Damn, is that a hard line?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a devaluing of yourself when you say that. But what people may not get when they hear that is, this dude's a sensei. He maybe hasn't been to the all blue yet. At the same time, he created his own world. Right? That's pretty badass, right? But this is not Sanji's world. This is the one he created. So Sanji, if you want to be that thing, then you've got to go out and do it yourself. Find yours and make it happen yourself. I love it. Absolutely. Staying here is death, out, or quitting. That's ouch. Most people don't ever hear something like that.
And so that brings us to the end here, where like I said earlier, Luffy, Zoro's back. Zoro's conscious. Usopp obviously is along for the ride, and Sanji has stepped onto the ship. We set sail. He thanks Zeff in that classic scene. One point that I'll make there: Sanji's foul mouth, that is written into the Japanese script in the anime and in the manga. So it's a very good understanding of it, that the way it was written. Again, credit to the writers for that. I think it was well done. And then we set sail, and we're about to go find Nami. And I'm trying to think. Oh, and that's where Buggy comes, and Buggy's going to tell them where to find her. And that's where we are, and that's where we are headed. Do we have some final thoughts that we want to wrap up with?
I have a question. So are
Yeah.
we talking about Shanks versus Mihawk today, or we're talking about next episode?
We can talk about Shanks today. We can talk about Shanks tomorrow. Or the next episode. It's I mean, if it's relevant, I guess, to sort of the Mihawk mythos, then we'll talk about it today. If it's gonna be, I don't know, sort of
where the wind's blowing.
Yeah.
The wind seems to be blowing that the topic's been raised. So
yeah, let's go into it. So yeah, Shanks and Mihawk. I mean, again, we were talking about this sort of different echelon. I'll call them mavericks that are forging their own path. They're not necessarily in a place to take on proteges to like show or impart their worldview. They're still busy doing their own thing and giving that 120%. There's not the capacity, I think, to take on others. And Shanks, in a way, he's protective of Luffy, but also is like, can you give me some space?
Please don't stab yourself in the eye again.
Yeah, just like here's what I think is right and wrong. I'll see you when you're a little bit older, you know. And in a completely contrasting way, Mihawk is like, all right, can you get out of my face, Zoro, for now? Here are some things I will impart to you. Can you get out of my face? I will see you another time. Sort of same relationship, right? Sort of, I mean, in a completely different way, but that same interaction, I think, of an upstart encountering a maverick and obviously wanting to supersede them in skill and everything, or to emulate them, and hitting a wall until they're ready, you know. Is that sort of where we're
family vibe from Shanks? I mean, he had a crew. He was the captain of the crew. I got to tell you, I don't even know. I mean, wasn't Mihawk part of the Whitebeards or not?
I don't think so.
Okay, then I'll retract that assertion. But I experienced him much more as a loner than Shanks. And I think that's why when Shanks was talking to Luffy, it was more like talking to a nephew. Because you don't have all that father-son stuff where he represents you and so you're uptight about it. Right. You know, where the nephew's a little more removed, so you can be a little more casual with him. Mihawk, he kind of adores Luffy. He's intrigued by Zoro, but I didn't see any of that sort of familial affection that I saw with Luffy and Shanks.
Well, Mihawk and Shanks, I kind of also, when you guys are talking about like order and chaos, it kind of reminded me of the dynamics between Mihawk and Shanks, because Shanks is very chaotic. Like he just goes with the vibe. He has some order in him, yes, sometimes maybe, but he just goes with the vibe. Like, why would you give your hat to like a 10-year-old or 8-year-old like that and tell him to like, oh, I will see you when you become the king of the pirates or something like that? That's like really irresponsible. At the same time, like maybe pushed Luffy to what he is now today. And on the other hand, I think I see Mihawk as a very calculative man. It's like he talks little, whatever he talks, he will just like, you know, have that weight on his conversation on what. So I just feel like Mihawk tries to keep it in order. He works with the government right now. But I know Shanks has the same power. Shanks is very, very powerful, but Shanks would have gotten what Mihawk has right now. But Shanks is like, no, I will just go on my way. So it's like an order and chaos between these two people, I feel like.
I actually like that a lot. Shanks is a bit more, I guess the word would be more chaotic. At the same time, for me, like Mihawk, his ability to be as ordered as he is because he's embodied all that chaos. And I don't want to say moved a step above Shanks. I like your idea of them being like all these older male characters and all these older characters seeing sort of gradients of chaos and order in different ways in different contexts. Yeah, I like that a lot.
I think that maybe it's inherent in the way of a swordsman to be more disciplined, I think. And also
Probably.
it's another thing that Mihawk's title is the greatest swordsman in the world that has ever lived. That's a very isolating title. It's lonely at the top, right? And I think that it would be a different dynamic and a completely different character who does whatever he wants with this immense power. It's sort of interesting to see that he has ties with the world government, although he says, I will do exactly as I please. At the same time, he's still cooperating to an extent. He still operates within the framework. He's not a tyrant going around cutting down villages and ships and ruling as the king of the pirates. No, he is the greatest swordsman who ever lived. And I think there's a difference in that. And I think there is a certain focus that is different from Shanks, who, I mean, for all the power that he has, is just kind of doing his own thing. And I think that, that's what Luffy is drawn to, is that freedom of I'm gonna pursue my goal and do what I want. That's my goal, is complete freedom. You know?
Listening to you talk, even Mihawk's title is an individualist title. Right? He's not called greatest captain. He's not even called the greatest warlord. He's called the greatest swordsman, right? Which is very individualistic.
Yeah. So that's another, I think, spectrum of isolation, and Zoro easily could have been that, and he was, until very recently. He was the demon pirate hunter of the East Blue, right? And until now, he's first mate of the Straw Hat Pirates, and that's a journey that he's on to be part of a crew, and that's the journey that we're on as the One Piece crew.
And I do like your hat. It's so good. It's so good.
Yeah, I guarantee I'll be watching this once a year. I don't know what, because right now I'm watching Lord of the Rings once a year. Sorry, I have to admit it. I'm also watching Full Metal Alchemist once a year. As I keep putting these things on, it's like, okay, I've got an annual cycle I got to go through.
Your roster is full. Hey, that's all right.
Watching One Piece the anime once a year, that just won't happen.
No. Well, that's at least you have that to watch for as long as it takes for the next season to come, and there's plenty to watch.
I'm on episode 4 of the anime.
So here's what's been happening the last couple of weeks. I will put the anime on before I try to go to sleep, and I'll just never make it to the end of the episode. And that's not the episode's fault. That's just me going to sleep, which is good. So I turn it off, and then I just pick it up from there the next night.
It's certain episodes, it will be the episode's fault. I will fully admit. But I think, that brings us from Gecko Island to Baratier in the Sambas region, and now we are headed towards Arlong Park to go save Nami. We're going to talk about Nami. We're going to talk about Arlong, and yes, Scott, we will be talking about GARP.
Oh, we'll be talking about GARP a lot. I guarantee it. So before we bring this show to a close, would you guys be interested in letting everyone know where they can find you on social media? And we will start with Rio.
Yes, absolutely. You can find me on most social media at I Know Rio, all one word. Do you know Rio? Because I don't.
How about you, Kristen?
You can find me on Instagram and TikTok at Fun-Sized Feral, as well as Kristen Feral Realtor on both.
Fantastic. And how about you, Maisha?
I only have my only one public account. I have account in every social media, but all of them are private. So the only one that's not private is my LinkedIn, and that's my name here, Maisha Tassin Ortiz. So yeah, that's where you can find me.
Fantastic. You can find all episodes of the One Piece crew on YouTube at Dark Loops Productions. And I do have it in me this week to start posting podcast versions of our conversations. Takes a little more time, but that's fine. That's why I haven't gotten it out so far. Individual vlogs what do they call them? These are vodcasts.
Okay.
Sure. Have video of them, right? So, anyway, so look for those. I think that's it. So there it is, from all of us to all of you. big hugs, and remember, into the grand
To the
line.
grand line.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
You wanna be my friend.